think I still have power now. Is Joshua 1:9. Anybody heard that one before?
Sure I have, but
Yeah. It's a popular one. Let me pull it up. And I'm just going to read it because I don't want to. Today I'll be reading, later on I'll be reading from the Bible, but starting in 9, I think it is just 9, yeah. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. I think that sometimes we as men get discouraged and get befuddled or get messed up because we forget who the Creator is and how to live courageously. We're going to be looking at the spiritual armor of God and how that applies to you and how to put it on every day to live a biblical, correct life. In deeper level mentoring, we look at 6 balances. Spiritual balance is the foundation for everything that we do. Emotional balance is how you see yourself, which is huge. If you don't see yourself the way that God created you to be, you'll never truly live that true victory. And in society that we live in today, they tear down the man. I mean, that's part of the goal. Because if they separate us and they pull us apart, then they have the victory. Socially, it's how do you represent yourself? Do you represent a false image of who you are? Or are you being true to who you are and not worrying about what people think? Mental, are you growing and striving to be mentally correct? Or are you allowing yourself to be dumbed down by society and the terms that they have? Physically, are you being responsible with the body that God gave you? That means, are you being responsible with the way you eat, what you drink, the way you treat other people, how you live your life? Financially, are you being responsible with the resources that God gave you? Which I know that is a pet peeve so many times when I talk about it, because we believe and we teach the 10% tithe. And a tithe needs to go back to a body of believers that are causing you to grow, whether that be the church, whether that be a mentoring ministry like ours. I know that we at Deeper Level Mentoring, we also support Ravi Zachariah, Westward Road, a couple other ministries with what we get in, because I believe in tithing even from what we get in from the ministry. And the last thing is probably the hardest thing. I think I got all 6 of them. But the last thing, the 7th thing is, as men, have we learned to lean? And do we lean on the people that actually are going to be there for us, or do we not? Because when we lean and we get hurt, we typically take our cookies and go home. We don't want to do it anymore. The only problem with that is we don't become the men that God created us to be. So we take our lesson from the Bible, from 2 great kings in the Old Testament, King David and King Solomon. King David was known as the man that sought after God's own heart. He was known as one of the greatest king of Israel. In fact, people remember him before they remember Solomon. Solomon was truly one of the greatest men that ever lived in the world. They believe that he ruled even more than Alexander the Great at one point. The difference was King David screwed up over time that he leaned on the prophets, the priests, and the mighty men. And King Solomon didn't lean on anybody. King Solomon asked for the blessing of wisdom to be handed down to him from his father. And he got it. But that wisdom took away the one humanity thing that he needed, people to be able to lean on. So at the end of his life in Ecclesiastes, Solomon writes, all is vanity, all is lost. When you look at those 2 examples, which example do you want to follow? King David, King Solomon? Most people would say King David. I've been accused in the past of concentrating on war and warriors and that type of thing by a lady in our church in California. And it's true, because we as men identify as warriors. From the time we're little, we're kind of identified as warriors. But a warrior that's stripped, that runs into battle naked, is going to get killed or hurt or something cut off that they may want. Because we look at the Old Testament way they fought, and and they fought Pericles back to back. In other words, somebody had their shoulder blades touching your shoulder blades so that you couldn't get messed up from that. We don't fight that way anymore. Now we tend to stab each other. We don't work as a group. We idolize and we individualize and we separate. And any house divided against itself is going to fall. So this weekend, these short hours that we have, we're going to look at some of the key elements. How do you become the biblical man and how do you stay that way? And if you know me well enough, I try to tear down walls because you built up these walls that hurt and they don't serve you. They keep you isolated. And while they keep you from being hurt, they also keep you from growing. So it's time to learn to lean, to use the principles that we're going to teach, and to grow stronger. So anybody got any questions so far? What do you think in today's society is the hardest thing to do as a man? What do you think the biggest stressor is? Somebody tell me.
Setting a strong example without offending somebody or upsetting somebody or a whole community or
Getting attacked? Yeah, I agree with you. What else?
I think reclaiming the joy of the Lord. A lot of times we just kind of feel like we're dead inside with all the stuff that we have to do. And sometimes we feel appreciated and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we feel respected, sometimes we don't. And we just kind of lose the joy of the Lord as a result of it.
Do you think that in both of those situations, we're trying to meet other people's expectations without necessarily following a godly principle? It's a hard thing to stay close to the Lord when you're trying to fight battles that you were never meant to fight. It's a hard thing to be able to be vulnerable with anybody when you're afraid of getting kicked really hard somewhere where you don't want to be kicked. And I would venture to say we try to teach understanding the full armor of God. In fact, I've told many times to read Psalms 91 to guys that are struggling because I look at it as kind of like the guy's psalm. Because it's all about what God is going to do for you. All you have to do is love Him. Most of us do, but we're afraid to follow Him. So I want you to begin to understand what this weekend's about. Let your guard down. Let Him in to work, to minister, and to do what He's going to do. For me, this weekend is a reset for what I want to do for this ministry and where I want to take it. And part of it is this is going to happen every year. This retreat is going to happen every year. Every year it's going to be different. The promos are already coming out for next year, how to live the victorious life. Kind of walks hand in hand with this one. What do you need to do to be victorious? You see, most of us live the life of a lamb when God calls us to live the life of a lion. And we're so afraid that we're going to get attacked, when in reality we don't realize that that's what God sometimes calls us to do, is be attacked, to stand up for the truth, as hard as it may be. So what I have for each of you tonight is just the journal, which they're on the porch still, but yeah, it's in the dark anyways. But I want you to, when we're done here in a few minutes, I want you to write down, what are 3 goals for yourself in the next hours and the next day that we have together? What are 3 goals that you need to accomplish? Is it a deeper relationship with Christ? Is it submitting more and surrendering more? Is it learning to be alone and walk with Him and be okay with that? Is it beginning to understand who He's created you to be? What are the 3 things that you need to do, and this is between you and him. I'm not gonna say, nobody's gonna see it. I'm not gonna ask you to share it. But I want us to start somewhere. Also this weekend, we're going to look at what are your goals? What is one of the things that we do in life coaching for deeper level mentoring is to establish what is the vision for your life that God has called. The Bible says without a vision the people perish. But many of us never look at that. We never see what our vision could be. So we never understand what our mission could be. And we never understand scriptures that back it up. So here's an example of what I'm saying. My vision statement since I was 16 has been only one life will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. If you know me pretty well, you know that fits me really well. My mission statement, which was derived from that, is to take the life-changing message of Jesus Christ to every man and every people group in every part of the world, which again is part of it. And then the scripture that I have that backs it up is Jeremiah 29:11-14. Now most people know Jeremiah 29:11, but they stop right there. Jeremiah 29:11 is a promise, but every promise in the Bible has something that you need to do. And this one is a little bit even extra because if you fulfill that promise, if you do what's required, there's another promise in it for you. Jeremiah 29:11-14 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to give you a hope and a future." That's the promise. Another promise. Then you will come to me. You will seek me and you will find me when you seek me with your whole heart. That's the requirement. Then the other promise, and I will be found by you and pull you out of exile to the places that I've sent you. That's a paraphrase on all I've learned. But it's what it's saying. I want you to begin to think out of the box. What does God have for you? You're here for a reason. You're here for a purpose. What is he going to do this year? This is the beginning of something far bigger than any of us will ever know. And if you let the fire of his love and passion rise up inside of you, it'll change the way you look at everything for the rest of your life. You got any questions? I'm going to get these out, and then we'll do the